When Shishiba and Osagiri was introduced, it was made clear to us that some of the clear personality traits with Shishiba was him being only in work mode as an assassin, right? And his mentality is sort of like clocking in, right? Very similar to Nanami from JJK or Shikamaru from Naruto. While on the other hand, his right hand Osagiri is his perfect assistant that has the same mindset to killing as him. They both hold no real hatred in their heart and really only likes Shishiba, which makes their partnership and their cohesion wonderful, right? So much, in fact, that she knew he didn't like onions, right? And pointed it out when the chef brought their dinner over. And we see in a rare instance Shishiba being pissed off at the head chef for serving him onions, which is another example of the complete lack of remorse for causing pain that they exhibit. But after they left the restaurant, they were sent on a mission to find Slur, right? And we see the efficient way Shishiba and Osagiri communicate. There's no emotion, there's just work, which is actually perfect for assassins. So by the time Slur's men was heading back to the base, they ran into our perfect duo that was already disposed of dozens of them easily, with not a speck of blood on them, right? They were so clean, in fact, Shishiba was saying he got lost with the dope smirk and even blatantly tell them he's there to kill them and that their boss, committed all these heinous crimes. And when they was told that Slur wasn't there, he didn't really care much. He just stated everything was law that was broken and said they have to die casually, like he was giving out a ticket or something. But now, of course, this disrespect wasn't unnoticed with the fodder, right? They wanted to throw hands with Shishiba, but unfortunately for them, Osagiri didn't give them a chance to even think about attacking before she decapitated them, with the only issue being Shishiba wanted to move out of the way before she killed them because he didn't want any of the blood on his suit. The last henchman was actually acting self-righteous, right? He was preaching about human life while being, the one that ends them. Shishiba didn't let him slide on that one, right? With that efficient hammer, right, he blitzed and snapped his neck. With the modifications that the henchman made, it actually saved his life. And then we see Sakamoto join the fight with impeccable timing to actually save the situation. On another note, I actually do love how Sakamoto and Shishiba interact with each other, right? Shishiba is acting like he always does. He's very formal, very detached, almost like greeting an older employee that you work with for a long time. We also see that Osagiri has a love for Sakamoto because he looks like a teddy bear. Bro, her blank state attitude makes everything she says somewhat important because of the flatness to it. You know what I mean? Like, instead of the three of them jumping goons together, Osagiri and Shishiba leave Sakamoto to fight the guy alone. And then they go get something to eat and they go to find Slur. But the way Shishiba rationalizes it in his brain is as if he can't imagine Sakamoto dying at all. And that's coming from a bleak man like Shishiba. So that should carry some merit. The next time that we see the duo, they're deeper in the Slur's lab, right? They're finding a more pinpoint location of him, right? We see that while Shishiba was analyzing the footage, he made a note of how strong that reindeer guy was, while Osagiri commented on how Slur himself actually looked strong. And when it comes to their chemistry, it's really attracting, right? Seeing how well they work with each other. Even among these peers, they're equals. Shishiba was one giving the intel and driving the conversation. Meanwhile, I noticed that Osagiri didn't really listen to anybody except Shishiba. Now that's a cool thing that I noticed. It's also interesting to see that they're back and forth. It's always some dry conversation that you can easily, text. It's like a text type of energy, right? But if I'm honest, these guys, this may be the best type of cohesion for two killers. So once Shishiba and Osagiri stop to eat, right, and prep for the next kill, we see that Osagiri and Shishiba, they humor a bit. More with us seeing the two plan to kill the convicts, and Osagiri rushes to eat, so she can go kill them faster. And she actually had the nerve to leave Shishiba with her food that had onions. We saw what happened last time, but meanwhile, when Osagiri ran off, she ran to a temple where she was praying, and she was praying to want to kill one of the convicts. And in a matter of seconds, her prayers were answered because God is good. And with jobber number one showing up trying to sneak our queen, right? But her reactions was so quick and swift. Not only did she counter with physically, but she countered with the utmost calmest demeanor. And she proceeds to beat this man down with steps it takes to pray in Japan. All right, you just can't hate on this woman. Meanwhile, Shishiba is wondering where she went. By the way, excellent communication on her part, right? So pretty much as jobber number one tries to hurt Osagiri and failing miserably, he's crashing out, bro. He's trying to figure out how he's different from her, right? If they're both killers and she has no right to judge his actions, and Osagiri gives the best line I think, any assassin can really say. When a big enters your house, when a big bug enters your house, right? You kill it, right? It's that simple. Basically, she is a fly swatter for her home, which is the JAA. This insults triggers the jobber. I don't blame him though. That was a brutal comeback. But even after he ramps up his attacks, it didn't damage Osagiri. It just separated her from her weapon, and even then, that didn't help him. With us seeing just how strong this lady is, her pain tolerance is basically like, what is pain? She doesn't care about her spikes. She doesn't care about the damage that he did to her. She got in close and kicked this guy so hard in the face. We got a flashback, okay? Once he got out of his flashback, he was completely tilted. And he needed her dead. We both know that the jobber didn't get the job done because our best girl one-shot him in the end, while giving him what he always wanted, which was love. But the love that she showed wasn't the love for him, but the love to the service she could provide to the order by killing scum such as herself and the jobber. Meanwhile, Shishiba and Osagiri, they returned to the JA after that, and after Gaku pulled up and wreaked havoc, before the old men of the old men Takamura pulled up and got to work. Even though the fallout was catastrophic to the business, it doesn't really seem to faze Shishiba and Osagiri. They don't really care emotionally about it. They don't want vengeance. They don't want revenge. Just simply because they are true assassins, they don't bring emotions to work. It's just a job to do. But Shishiba doesn't care to a point that he doesn't want to work. He doesn't have to. And even after asking Nagumo what's the point of Kanagiri if he films movies all day with Osagiri actually seconding that and asking if he could just be fired. But we actually find out from Nagumo he actually killed a previous order member in combat to become one. Besides that bum, we do see more into the mindset of Osagiri and Shishiba, with us seeing Shishiba knowing full well the place they are in, the world that they're operating in, the full repercussions of what happens if the government collapses, thanks to Slur. On the other hand, we see Osagiri truly being naive to the world, with her thinking they're good guys until Shishiba corrected her. She's fully trusting in him. She's a blank slate to be shaped however the world pleases. But we also see Nagumo's perspective on good and evil, right? With him thinking there isn't really good and evil, but to him, a person that has an obsession with a certain sense of justice is, in fact, evil in his eyes. So Shishiba and Osagiri, from Nagumo's perspective and worldview, wouldn't actually be evil because they have no strong attachment and or obsession with anything. So we actually learn that Shishiba didn't graduate from assassin school, on top of not going to the same school as the rest of the order members. We also learn that Osagiri didn't go to assassin school either, and her family were actually farmers. We see that Nagumo left out that Osagiri, which, he left her behind, which actually annoyed, Shishiba. And we see that Nagumo, took out the assassins, chasing them down in a clean fashion, with us seeing the sheer speed that Nagumo had taking out the car full of assassins. But more than that, what I love about Shishiba is even when he's defending himself, he does it with such finesse and casualty. It gives off the aura that he's never really in danger. And it's comforting to see him fighting almost like a genius solving a problem easily. And that genius has a funny dry humor. And it just adds the cherry on top, right? Even Nagumo has his own style of killing as well. That's cruel yet has finesse. But we see that Yoshimura, Shishiba's master, showed up and caused him to stop driving and focus entirely on fighting him. With us also seeing that Osagiri, catching up to assist Shishiba, being slightly annoyed. We see that Yoshimura retreat for the time being and knowing that he has been outmatched at this time. But we find out that they were sent on this mission to kill Yoshimura. And Yoshimura was sent on a mission and failed it. So the JA wanted him dead, because he's dead meat he's dead weight at this point, right? We see that he's very similar to Shishiba, the thinkings that he has, the ideology of assassins as a blank slate and needing to be invisible to do their job properly. Only if he knew how that would come to bite him in the ass. Because once they squared up, Shishiba was casually stating why he's going to kill him, and his side piece, addressing under the JA regulations and laws. So we know this isn't personal at all for Shishiba. But he did get a bit personal when asking for what the Yoshimura's intentions were. With the truth simply being it was a man on the run that wants to see his family. Nonetheless, Shishiba gotta do his job. And we find out in the past Shishiba let Yoshimura get away screwing up a mission. The past events didn't seem to have that much of an effect on Shishiba, judgment to kill him, but before anything pops off, our best girl, Osagiri, could not help herself, and she just had to intervene. She ended up hitting Yoshimura through a couple of buildings, but of course, they don't follow up. They just start having a casual conversation with not even a lick of tension in the air, with them having no real sense of urgency, further cementing their way and ideology of being an assassin, a bare minimum effort. In a quick flashback, we find out that Shishiba was supposed to die for killing JA assassins under Yoshimura. But instead, Shishiba was offered a job being an assassin. And one of his main questions was the pay, which I think sealed the deal with Yoshimura. The lack of care about death. But back in the present, the banter between them is priceless. I love how naive and polite she could be despite her crass and violent actions. We do get a classic 2v2 with Osagiri taking Yoshimura's side piece and Shishiba taking his old master. While the side piece isn't weak by any means, pulling out of her own weapon and shooting projectiles, while it's child's play to Osagiri that's finding the entire situation boring. It seems to interacting with pedestrians as if she's going on a walk and not in deadly combat. Shishiba, on the other hand, isn't any better, with his senpai wanting to share a moment and Shishiba dismissing it, and yet proving his teachings right by his apathetic feelings with killing. But unfortunately, for the backup that's there to help Yoshimura, decided to jump Shishiba. And the fact he didn't put in effort, they really thought they had a chance to kill him until their heads were rolling on the ground. The way he casually kills and the intentions behind his movements being as minimum as possible, on top of the fact that he's funny and calm, just works for me, man. We see Osagiri. She struggles with not being rough and causing collateral damage to kill the geisha, but we find out Shishiba asked her to kill with minimum damage to the city. She also believes that civilians deserve a peaceful life, not corrupted by their world. And that's a huge insight into her worldview and her occupation. I peeped that. But even Shishiba understands Osagiri's strong points and emphasizes them to the max with their personal weapons, on top of the fact that she fights like a wild beast. This geisha is screwed, bro, and she sees clearly now. And when she was forced to retreat, only to be ran down like a dog, dragged back, and had her throat slit, she was talking real big at the beginning of the fight. But it's crazy how the switch up happens. Shishiba simply loves simplicity, and he's always been like that, for nothing more than practical reasons. And we see in the flashback how he met his boss Yoshimura. and his wife. And the crazy thing is, right after Yosamura asked him to take care of his son, if he ever died, he had to kill his wife, who was a very enemy he was tasked to complete, only for his son to see him kill his mother without the context that shaped Amane to what we see today. It's really crazy, as while Shishiba is fighting and is at a disadvantage, he was still bored with the fight and showed no real sign of panic, and actually relating killing to house cleaning, which isn't much of a fun activity. It's just duties that you gotta get done. And on the side note, y'all, I really love Sakamoto Days' choreographic fights, and we've seen how it's changed, and it's something that about the transitions that make me feel the pages are alive, man. Kudos to Yuto Suzuki. Yeah, I believe I said it right. Yuto Suzuki. We get a little more insight into Shishiba while the fight continues, and it's really important to point out that he has no ego or pride or goals. He simply wants the next day to be better than the last and less things to clean up. And this same mindset could propel him to higher heights, but it's the same mindset that holds him back from advancement. The way Shishiba ended this fight, it showed a hint, just a hint of regret fighting his old master. We find out that Nagumo himself saved Yosamura for his own personal gain, and actually decided to tell the truth to Shishiba about letting his master stay alive and not finishing him off. And in the same crime he's accusing Shishiba for, he's actually guilty of, which is the irony. So it's funny to see Shishiba actually wanting to fight Nagumo, even though Nagumo was just playing around. That's just what he does. But on a different note, I swear, bro, Shishiba is always driving. The next time we see him in Osagiri, they were interrogating Hisuke about his encounter with one of Slur's top dogs. But while Hisuke was stating how he wanted to save Hio, the older member that died, fighting in Slur, we see Shishiba having a mindset of if any of them died, they were simply weak. That's it. And the fact that they are assassins will be hypocritical if they value each other's lives while taking them every day, which makes sense. It really does make sense. So when Nagumo wanted to use, their big boss as bait to kill Slur, it goes along with the model that they follow, not valuing life. So when the Order reached the museum, which is where the terrorist attack was happening against their chairman, Osagiri and Shishiba was standing guard with their leader until an announcement was made to go after Mafuyu. And of course they decided rock, paper, scissors would determine who actually gets to do their job, because who would just want to do their job voluntarily, right? Leave it up to chance, y'all. And poor for Mafuyu and Shin, they got Osagiri. And their tail was in between their legs because they were shaking. But as Osagiri was mollywopping Mafuyu, we find out she has idle thoughts, as if she's a tree. There's no bloodlust at all. And even though Mafuyu sacrificed some of his life force, it still wasn't enough to conquer our main girl. So we find out that when Seba showed up to save his little brother, his invisible suit tricked Osagiri into thinking that he was a ghost. And we find out that her only fear, oddly enough, is it's the same thing they use to escape. Is her fear of ghosts, which is actually pretty funny. So while Shishiba was fighting a 2v1 against Slur's followers, he still had that calm, cool, collected demeanor despite being at a disadvantage. And things got even worse for Shishiba because he has to protect Shin for holding him back because he didn't and could not use his ESP abilities at that time. The situation was so dire to the point that Shishiba actually thinks about how he used to be annoyed at Osagiri over trivial things, like her spacing out or always being hungry. But the bottom line was that she was reliable. And at the end of the day, and right now, Shin isn't. And in their world, that's a major problem. Shin, however, was good for a few things, and a distraction, that being one of them. And a distraction was just what they needed, because Amane showed up to help, which startled Shishiba, given the fact that he thinks he just killed his dad. So in their world, thoughts like this could slow you down, which was in fact what we seen from Shishiba, because he isn't just some robot, he is still a human being. So of course, he went to go save Amane from certain death and try to create small talk, even joking around in that cold, dry humor that we love. And so even though their lives are in danger, at least Shishiba is consistent in his behavior. So at the end of the day, Shishiba wanted to fight alone, but that wasn't an option for him, given his hands being full. Funny enough, these partners are messing things up for the other first. And Shin was giving Shishiba a hard time for his weakness, and now one of Slur's men was incompetent enough to nerf his comrade, which actually gave Shishiba the small opening he needed to finish the fight, cleanly as usual. Even Amane was astonished by how strong Shishiba was and how much damage he did with such a small opening to attack, and finishing to the people there, and that there's a reason that he's the third strongest in the order after Nagumo and Takamura. But while they had a moment, however, Shishiba revealed to Amane that he was the one that killed his father. So pretty much while Shishiba just dropped this bombshell, Amane is trying to process this while he's trying to get an answer at Shishiba with no luck. So we actually see that Shishiba is having a full circle moment, right? He's remembering what Yoshimura taught him about getting to know your enemies well, and that's not being a good thing, because everyone is potentially your enemy in their world. And in this moment of weakness and vulnerability, the enemy attacked Shishiba blind spot, and even though he countered, he was still left with a heavy wound, and the fact that the other lady showed up to finish him off, all hope was lost. Until one lonely farm girl decided enough was enough, and osagiri showing up to save the day is just a cherry on top. Not only does she enter like a badass, cutting the floor with her saw and literally dismembering the fire dude instantly, she actually crawls out of the floor like the scary girl from the movie The Ring. When she crawls out of the screen, bro, same vibes. She instantly started cradling Shishiba and wondering, what happened? What attack did this to you? And then she immediately thought it was Amane that actually hurt Shishiba. And then and then before she could even wrap up the fight and get him out of there, Shishiba was just praying that, oh my God, she's mad. This is not good. But she does end up wrapping up the fight and getting him out of there just in the nick of time. So pretty much the next time we see Osagiri and Shishiba was when they were summoned by Oki to meet the new order members and being assigned to actually kill Sakamoto, Nagumo, and X, with them having a slight altercation with Sakamoto's group, with us seeing heavy doubt in Shishiba's demeanor. That demeanor shift I told y'all about actually meant something, as we see Shishiba tell Shin with his thoughts that he's on their side. And while things was getting hairy for Sakamoto and Oki, purposely trying to traumatize him by making it seem like his entire family is dead. But in the nick of time, the former order leaders showed up to save the day, with Shishiba finding out that Yoshimura was actually still alive, and he was happy about that. Lucky for us, the old order forced the new order to retreat until we see them regroup and join forces. With Izuki's men, and the chemistry is just off, y'all. These guys was just fighting each other like a week ago, and now they gotta work together. So we see that Shishiba and that magnetic lady that he fought have a back and forth, with Osagiri intervening like the perfect partner she is, and even had zero social courtesy, which the situation desperately called for, with her easily blocking that magnetic lady's attack and just finessing all over her, bro. It was a good sight to see, man. I just love these guys. I love Osagiri and Shishiba. So pretty much by the time when Shishiba was ready to betray the order, we got a mini flashback and was given the full context behind what he said to Shin back when he got the hint that he was good. But their plan to kill Izuki, that him and Nagumo was thinking about, needing no bloodlust to be involved, and Shishiba understood that his partner all too well and knew that she couldn't help but have bloodlust when she would fight for him, and that would only bring Takamura out. And the beautiful thing that I noticed about this quick scene is since Shishiba told her he didn't need her, she automatically went to him being an enemy. Like she was just solving a simple math problem like 1 + 1 is 2. With Shishiba agreeing calmly. Because at this point, Shishiba didn't want to carry those heavy deaths on his shoulder anymore. Because at the end of the day, he is human. He was finally done with that life, bro. And now all that was left was to kill Izuki in the order. But as soon as Shishiba attacked Izuki, all hell broke loose for him. As soon as he had the upper hand, 2 more order members popped up to stop him. And even in a situation like this, Shishiba is still Shishiba till the day he dies. With a dry humor and simple outlook, he simply was tired of killing. Because at the end of the day, he wanted killing to just be a chore, to just be a duty to complete, but it was weighing heavy on his soul, man. And because he's a human being with feelings, regardless of that fact, Shishiba was in trouble. And we see how much of a disadvantage he was in and the real damage he was sustaining and the real injuries until the point where he was about to die. And right before that could happen, his true partner in crime showed up to help him clean up the garbage in this world. The soulless duo that was the same duo that stood side by side with each other, and they will do that until the bitter end. So pretty much in Osagiri's backstory, it's so simple and pure. She was a strong farm girl that killed a bunch of assassins that was sent there. And once Shishiba was there to find out what happened, he met her and took her under his wing. And being honest and simple, he found comfort in finding someone like that. Funny enough, their bond is too strong-willed and independent. The order has to destroy it, ironically. So while Osagiri and Shishiba are defending themselves, they get thrown into about 50 assassins hungry for the order position, and they were ordered to kill them. And that's when Osagiri let loose, letting out all her bloodlust and just ripping these people apart. But even though Shishiba was killing them as well, she was being compared to a wild beast. And since that was the case, Mr. Takamura was let out because he was responding to the bloodlust that Osagiri was emitting. And as soon as they was able to comprehend the change, Mr. Takamura was already slicing down Osagiri, and it was sending chills down Shishiba's spine. But this happened while he remembered that Osagiri's dream about him wandering off from the rest of them and begged him to take her with him no matter what. And all this while he was holding her, bleeding out. Her body was getting colder, and while being surrounded by the most powerful enemies, Shishiba vows to not let Osagiri die. And he tries his hardest to defend her, and at the nick of time, Kamahade, the sniper, saved him and Osagiri for no more of a reason than because he finds Osagiri pretty. But no matter the reason, help is help, right? Beggars can't be choosers. So even though Kamahate can't do anything up close, he's at least a distraction for Shishiba to take Osagiri and run to safety. But of course Shishiba runs into his natural enemy, to his weapon, of course, but which is this electro guy that completely changes the whole vibe for the whole place, good and bad. And he starts overwhelming Shishiba fast. But by the grace of God, the byproduct of Shishiba being shocked that much, the collateral damage was shock. The shock was so great. It was so shocking that Osagiri was actually able to wake up one more time to attack the static guy hard and fast, and did enough damage to actually immobilize him briefly, enough for them to escape alive. Through the good times, through the boring times, through the horrible times, Osagiri and Shishiba stood together and showed just as much loyalty as a duo that had a good heart and wasn't neutral. The perfect assassin duo on paper turned out not to be so bad morally as well. Thank you for watching. You guys have a blessed day.